We were so wrong, Magnus.
Still, he is not yet the unbeatable foe of our time.
In 2024, Marvel Productions made a very bold move by reviving the classic 90s X-Men animated series, and surprisingly, it paid off better than most would have expected. But some hurdles could have derailed the series getting a second season, particularly the controversy behind the showrunner Bo DeMayo's conduct behind the scenes, which was properly handled in my book. So with a new showrunner and status quo for the series, does Season 2 live up to the expectations set upon it, or does it end up becoming a huge disappointment? Let's find out.
We take him alive.
Send the team to recover the fallen androids, then leave Nur to me. I promise I will see our X-Men safely home, old friend.
Upon viewing the first episode, I could sense that the series has a new status quo. In most anime series, they slowly bring you back into the story and where it left off with its premiere episode. This is not the case with Season 2 of X-Men 97. From the very beginning, the viewer is shown Forge and Bishop playing out their mission to retrieve the X-Men from their excursion into time. No time is wasted on setup. We see what they are trying to do, and they know they have to go to two separate time periods to achieve their mission. The setup is well done in my opinion. They take you right into the thick of things. The viewer gets a glimpse into the first timeline, 3960 AD, where Forge sets off to. A future where everything is bleak, but there's hope for this future as we see the person who is destined to save it, Nathan Summers. As we know by now from episode 3 of season 1, Inferno, he was sent into the future as a baby. Here, he is a teenager who is raised by Mother Ascani and under the tutelage of Cyclops and Jean Grey. Of course, we see one half of the X-Men as well, being Wolverine and Storm. Apparently, he has become a child of prophecy according to Ascani. Here, we see a display of parental love towards Nathan from Scott and Jean. The scene with Nathan and his parents talking in the tent was endearing to say the least. I have to point out how good the dialogue between the characters was. It really sounded genuine bonding with Nathan, despite him not knowing their true identities as his parents. But it's their scene when they are captured that stands out the most. They encourage Nathan by telling him the truth about who they are and channeling his powers to help them. The dialogue between Forge and Storm was great as well. Speaking of Nathan, he becomes the focus of episode 2. Well, technically it's Jubilee and Sunspot who are the real focus, as they are recruited to Cable's team, X-Force. In this episode, we get a very different intro showcasing not the X-Men, but the X-Force. This is something that I adored seeing. It's neat touches like these that make the series stand out amongst many in its space. They acknowledge this series for fans of the comics. It goes to show how far Marvel has come as an IP holder. To add on that, we also get to see the X Factor in this episode as well, looking very accurate to their depiction in the comics, especially in the 90s run of the comics. Just seeing these two teams facing off in comic book accurate form was quite pleasant to watch. But this episode is more about Cable, Jubilee, and Sunspot and their disagreements about the methods of handling mutants. Cable is all about the mission, whereas Jubilee and Sunspot are all about freeing mutants and maintaining the teachings Professor X has taught them. Particularly Jubilee, considering how far she came since the original series. She went from being an unwanted foster child trying to find her place as a mutant to knowing what she needs to do to righteously contribute to the cause. In the episode, we see the burden of Cable's mission in the present juxtaposed with his burdening destiny as a teenager in the future. Also, it was great to see White Queen and Psylocke being prominent in the episode as well, instead of being a cameo and a morph transformation respectively. Episode 3 serves as a backward trilogy as we are taken to the past in ancient Egypt. Here we see En-Sabinur, the man who will eventually become Apocalypse. I liked how they established that he is a threat in all of the timelines, despite him not taking action in doing so, or which he eventually does. More on that shortly. As for the premise, we see Rogue, Professor X, Nightcrawler, and Beast trying to collect robot parts to repair a portal machine that can take them back to the present. We also see Magneto trying to be somewhat of a mentor to En-Sabinur so he can lead him on a better path and prevent the events of the present and the future from happening. Magneto's resolve to influence him is admirable, as he wants to change the fate of mutant kind itself and help humankind in the process. The old Magneto wouldn't have gone for that, but here he embraces Xavier's mission for peace between mutants and humans. Surprisingly, Xavier isn't quite on board for a reason. This is revealed when Magneto's plan backfires on them. That's the thing about fate and destiny. No matter what, it's always certain to happen one way or the other. The season touches upon the theme of destiny a lot for the first 5 episodes, with Cable trying to fulfill his mission in the present, his younger self in the future learning to accept his destiny, and En-Sabinur shaping his destiny, despite the valid attempts from Professor X and Magneto trying to stop it from happening. Speaking of characters, the series has a new animation team picking up the duties from Studio Mir, that being Red Dog Culture House, the South Korean animation studio responsible for Netflix's The Witcher, Nightmare of the Wolf, and Dragon Age Absolution. Despite the studio not having much of a portfolio, the studio proves that they are a talented group of animators, as the character designs, visual effects, and the fluidity of the animation are quite up to par with Studio Mir's effort. I will go as far as to say that the animation is better in many ways compared to the first season, and that's saying a lot considering Studio Mir is one of the most talented studios in the business. The characters move so fluidly that it almost felt like anime. Examples are the action scenes when so much chaos is happening, such as Magneto trying to save an entire Egyptian village from being destroyed. Every scene is bursting with color. Just imagine getting this kind of animation back in the 90s on Saturday mornings. Goes to show you how far animation has come in the last 30 plus years. Speaking of Magneto trying to save that village, Episode 4 continues with En-Sabinur and the rest of the X-Men finding common ground. Also, there's a bit of foreshadowing in this episode, and for good reason. Let me get straight to it. As I said, you can't stop fate from happening, as they are led to the temple to see if they could reverse what happened to En-Sabinur's people and ultimately get home to their time. But fate intervenes as En-Sabinur finally realizes his true purpose, written on the walls of the temple as they enter the sanctuary. And we get a reveal of the man truly behind it all, Kang the Conqueror. For anyone who has read any Marvel comic, they know firsthand how formidable and cunning he is. His being there in the past does explain the future technology in ancient Egypt, but his place there is a mystery in itself. By the way, spoiler alert, this isn't touched upon again. Such a shame. Also, we see the death of Magneto by the hands of Apocalypse. Episode 5, on the other hand, let's just say that there's not much to say about that one. I will also touch on that later as well. As for episode 6, this is where the series starts to pick things back up as the episode focuses on Polaris, who is one of Magneto's daughters. Anyone who's a diehard fan knows his other daughter, which they haven't introduced in this series, surprisingly. But I digress. Here in this episode, we see Polaris is at odds with her government superiors on how to police those who engage in misconduct. This causes her to be released from her duty. Of course, she makes her way back to the mansion to be amongst the X-Men. I loved how Professor Xavier processing his loss of his greatest friend. but his grief soon turns his greatest asset into a threat itself. I speak of Cerebro. Yes, it goes full on Ultron on the X-Men. The strength of the episode in particular, though, is Polaris herself. She's a very likable character. She feels like a character who wants to do right, but she's conflicted by the past sins of her father. I also noticed upon watching that she had great chemistry with Bishop. Could have been just my imagination, but what was not my imagination is how the episode was structured. This was the best episode in terms of being consistent with its storytelling. Episode 7 introduces us to the Acolytes of Magneto, led by Exodus. Here we see the effects of the incident in Genosha in Season 1. The focus of the episode is quite a moral one, as it is mostly a conversation about the prejudice between mutants and humans. Of course, we get the leader of Friends of Humanity himself, Graydon Creed, who many know from watching the original series and the comics has ties to mutants, as he is the son of Sabretooth himself. Here, he is kidnapped by the Acolytes so he can pay for the crimes his movement has caused for mutant kind. Seeing it all go down the way it does, the episode serves as closure to Creed's character. The X-Men arrive in the Savage Lands where the Acolytes now reside. Nightcrawler and Exodus serve as two sides of a proverbial coin in this episode. Nightcrawler, being the moral compass, pleads in Creed's case. He's a character whom I always loved in the comics, a man who despite his appearance has a righteous heart and a belief system steeped in faith. That contrast always made the character unique. In the episode, these traits shine as he defends Creed with not only logic, but also a sense of sympathy never afforded to many. We learn why Creed does what he does. His reason for doing what he does is completely valid, but you are left wondering if it's truly justified. The viewer is forced to look at both sides of the argument. Exodus is justified in feeling the way he does, and so is Creed. But we also see that Creed and Exodus are the same in their methods as well. It goes to show you that both sides can be completely flawed without approaching matters with civility and understanding. It was fitting that it was Nightcrawler trying to resolve the conflict between Exodus and Creed throughout the episode. He is the moral compass. Even though we see him waver a bit when he warps Creed away from the conflict, you also see that he has control of not only the situation, but also his own emotions. The episode wasn't particularly strong in terms of advancing the story, but it did manage to set some things in motion, particularly getting Colossus closure and back with the X-Men. That's enough in my book. Episode 8 takes a drastic turn as we learn that Gambit is alive. We are given glimpses at the end of episode 7 of what happened, and it appears this was the doing of Apocalypse. Speaking of him, we also find out that he is dead as well. I can admit this was quite the turn of events, considering how much they had set him up to be the big baddie of the season. This episode is a prime example of the status quo for the season, correcting the flaws Beau DeMayo made with season 1. Speaking of Beau DeMayo, it was quite odd to see these changes in place, considering he produced and co-wrote most of the episodes in the season. I can only presume that he was either brought back to help with transitioning the writing duties to the other writers on the staff, or he already had these changes in place and given credit. Whatever it was, the question is whether this was a good move for the series or bad. More on that as well. As for the episode itself, Gambit comes back and turns his Thieves Guild brethren into his minions so they can attack the X-Men. Before these events transpired, we see Rogue still mourning over Gambit's death. Jubilee brings her hope again when she gives her a playing card left behind at the scene of Apocalypse's corpse. In the episode, it focuses more on Rogue and Gambit as the latter initiates his plans, despite still being cordial with Rogue. Their chemistry is the reason many fans love them in the first place. This is played up very well. We also see the weight of Dark Gambit's ambition, despite not being clearly explained why he is doing what he's doing. It does have a cool fight scene between Professor X and Dark Gambit in the mental realm. We learn that he is being controlled by Apocalypse, and it is Rogue who ends up saving him in the end by pulling Gambit's consciousness away from Apocalypse. just in time so Cable wouldn't blast him to bits. Gotta love Cable. A trigger is the solution to every problem he encounters. Definitely in line with the portrayal of the character in the comics. Fortunately, episode 9 gives the audience quite the payoff. As a matter of fact, I will go as far as to say that it was better than season 1's finale. Not in the way of the episode having a better payoff or scope, which season 1's finale had in spades. The reason episode 9 excels is that it manages to stick the landing very well. And we see the culmination of Cable and Apocalypse's destinies. This was also the strongest aspect of the season, and I have to say that this finale was written very well. Ironically, it was just written by one person. Brian Ford Sullivan did a great job, to say the least. In the episode, we see Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Beast in search of the temple Apocalypse had gotten his powers from, a bookend of sorts. Their reason being there is quite noble, as they are trying to find a way to separate Gambit from Apocalypse. This is for good reason. It was established in the previous episode that Dr. Cooper and her X-Factor team made a truce with Cable and his X-Force team. Episode 9 takes place with them storming the X-Corp building. The strength of the episode is how all of these characters interact with each other. All of them have a history with one another. It also goes to show you further how far Jubilee has grown as a character since the original series. She is so awesome in this season. The battle that ensues in the X-Corp building takes up the majority of the episode, which was a good thing. But what was even better was Rogue getting celestial powers, with having to sacrifice something, of course. Long story short, Rogue ends up saving Gambit from Apocalypse. Predictable, albeit very cool. But what wasn't predictable was the sacrifice of a very important character, that being Nightcrawler. As usual, he ends up being that beacon of light as he always has been. Just seeing how far the character has come from the original series to now made it all worth it. It fell in line with the character, sacrificing his life for his sister and his fellow X-Men. What made it even sadder was that this was the end of the episode. All of them went on with their lives while he made that sacrifice. Thanks a lot, Nightcrawler. Thanks a lot. X-Men 97 Season 2 was quite the ride. That I can say at least. But was it worth the watch? And just as I asked at the beginning of the review, does it live up to the expectations set upon it? Well, yes and no. See, X-Men 97 Season 2 has a flaw that can't be overlooked upon watching it. Every episode seemed to either correct the flaws of the previous season or introduce several elements of the comics. The problem with the latter is that most of it lacked any kind of cohesion. They are introduced just for the sake of having them there for cool factor. The biggest example of this is episode 5. Let's touch on that. To make a long story short, it was a waste of an episode. Sure, we see characters like Sabretooth, Maverick, and Lady Deathstrike, but why are they there with him on this mission? Also, why did this need to be an episode in the first place? Because they wanted to introduce the Brood. Was that cool to see? Yes, but does it serve the overall plot of the season? No. The entire episode is there to establish that Wolverine gets his adamantium back into his skeleton, but this could have been done with so little time instead of a full episode. The episode also points out another problem with the season: the length of it. The season is only 9 episodes, so as a viewer, you are going to want more out of the storytelling. The season fails to deliver in this aspect completely. Episodes 5 and 7 serve no advancement with the story, but at least with episode 7, we get some kind of a closure for Graydon Creed and Colossus, and something at the end of it to move the storyline along. But that's the problem. With only 9 episodes, the showrunners should be giving the audience a straight line into building up the conflict with Apocalypse. which itself ends up being lackluster and making the viewer feel cheated out of a strong payoff. Instead, the viewer gets mostly exposition and cool moments that don't really factor much into the season. He felt less like an end-of-the-world villain and more like an evil spirit they were trying to exorcise. It just felt like a way to shoehorn Gambit back into the story at the expense of giving Apocalypse a very strong presence in the season. Such a missed opportunity. Also, it was much appreciated that the writing staff fixed the flaws of the first season, but even doing that presents new flaws. Particularly the whole love triangle with Magneto, Gambit, and Rogue from season 1. It is as if they wanted the audience to forget it happened in the first place. Rogue shows no kind of emotional attachment to Magneto in this season whatsoever. Instead, that attachment is displayed between Professor X and Magneto, which should have been the way to begin with. The whole angle in season 1 didn't only sour many fans, but also made Rogue unsympathetic. So when she finally reunites with Gambit, she doesn't only doubt their reunion, but it also made me see how uninterested I was in seeing them together again. The finale did smooth things over with them. Hopefully their chemistry is smoothed over in the next season going forward, but in terms of this season in particular, it was a miss for me. It may sound like I am saying the season doesn't get anything right, but that's not entirely the case. They did, particularly their focus on the destinies of Cable and Apocalypse. This was handled very well. You see that Cable has a huge chip on his shoulder, and this is played up very well throughout the season. As a matter of fact, this is the most consistent aspect of the season itself. Also, I love the characters they introduced, despite what I said about the way they were introduced into the season. This series is made for fans of the comics and it shows. The reason why it works is how comic book accurate they looked. The animation, as I previously pointed out, is top notch. Some of the best you will see in any anime series this year. Well, until Invincible comes back, that is. In other words, this is definitely not a flaw of this season. Such a visual feast on the eyes. Ultimately, X-Men 97 Season 2 doesn't live up to expectations entirely, but it does manage to keep the viewer engaged, despite its glaring flaws. There is much story to tell, and I'm pretty sure they can pull it off in the seasons to come. But if I could give a word of advice to the showrunner, I would say that the series needs to focus more on the overall storyline instead of having filler. The story that they are trying to tell needs more room to breathe. If they were making episodes within the confines of a 13 to 24 episode season, they could tell stories that deviate from the main storyline. But with 9 episodes like Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs and Motendo from season 1 shouldn't exist at all. It lessens the amount of story that they can tell and dissatisfies an audience who have waited long for another season. Hopefully they can eliminate this going forward or give us a 13 episode season going forward to alleviate that. My overall take on the season is that it seems as if the showrunner was trying to right the ship instead of telling something more consistent. The finale did leave the viewer wanting more, especially with that after credit scene. That introduces a whole new dynamic that's going to make season 3 a must watch. Let's just say that life for mutants is about to get much harder than it ever was for them. There's still one question left unanswered. Why was Kang the Conqueror in the past in the first place? Guess we'll find out in the next season. Let's hope it isn't in a filler episode.
Helm her! We have all the power we need. We have you, Lorna.
Me?
If you summon all the electromagnetic energy that you can.
Professor, if I lose control again and unleash this on everybody?
I'll absorb the spill-off. Balance you out.
Lorna, you are your father's daughter. I have seen him do the incredible. Now, so must you.